Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about the root cause of depression and how you can get rid of your depressive thoughts. The root cause of depression actually comes down to a comparison of our current reality to a fantasy of how life should be. The more we compare our life to that fantasy or to how life was in the past, the less we are adaptable to the ever-changing environment and the less we appreciate life as it is right now. And that fantasy is actually what's driving our depression. The more we hold on to that fantasy, the more we create the depression. And be aware that the fantasies can often be unconscious. So we often are not really aware of it. We can become aware of it if we really sit down and try to look at, okay, where do we have our fantasies here? But in everyday life, we just think we just have depressive thoughts. No, they're always entangled to a fantasy that we hold on to. So if you want to really get rid of depressive thoughts that you might have, then sit down and try to look at where do you think this is how life should be actually. This is where I wanted to be or where I fantasized to be at this point of my life. Or this is how I think life should still be because I'm holding on to how life was in the past and I don't want it to change, which is a normal way of life. Is that one thing is for sure, that things are changing, right? So the more adaptable you can be, the more you can see the benefits of how life is now compared to how it was before, instead of just looking at the benefits of how life was before than how it is now, the more you can really become appreciative to how life actually is. So imagine, you have a fantasy, an unrealistic expectation when you start your business that the business will go skyrocketing in like the first year, right? Which is often the case when people start out with their business, because you have that imagination that it's just going to be like easy and people will love my product because it's the best product in the world and it's all going to be like simple, and we usually have like some kind of fantasies there, especially when we haven't started our own business yet. But then we get smacked by reality and it's like, okay, people don't really want my product. It has all these, glitches and problems, or, it comes with a lot of challenges just to get the business started and all the licenses and everything. And eventually we're like, wow, like now we have a more realistic expectation of how it is to start my own business. And then some people persevere and some don't. But the people that persevere after a few years and when their business actually became successful, they always say, if I would have known how hard it is and how challenging it is to create my own business, I don't know if I ever would have started my business. So it's often that we have these unrealistic expectations that are just not real, right? And the more we humble ourselves and really look at the challenges that might also come our way if we start out doing our own thing or whatever the project or endeavor is, the more we have more of a balanced perspective and the less likely we're gonna get depressed when things are not the way that we fantasized them to be. So that's just one example. There can be like so many different fantasies that we can have, which are usually unrealistic expectations of, how life should be, of how other people should be, how we should be ourselves. If we have expectations that we live outside of what we actually value most and of what our highest priorities are, we will get frustrated with ourselves. We will judge ourselves because we're not doing what we actually think we wanted or we should do, right? So then it's also about becoming more realistic about yourself and about, what really is important to you and what you spend most of your time on, compared to that you believe you should spend more time on the fantasy that you have in your mind. If you compare yourself to others and think, oh, I should actually go to the gym 5 times a week as well because I want to look like XYZ. And it's not really real to you because you don't really value, looking super fit and going to the gym as much as the other person. So you are not willing to put in all the time and hour and hard work to get there. So it's a fantasy that you think you can, look like that person, probably, So really try to sit down and try to let those fantasies that drive your depression go. And one way to do it is to look at what your fantasy is and write down all the drawbacks that the fantasies would have. So let's say, for example, you had the fantasy that you would go that you would go and look like that person and that you would go to the gym 5 times a week. And write down what would be the drawbacks if you actually would do that and would achieve that. What would be the drawbacks for you, for the people around you? Maybe don't have that much time to spend with your friends, family, and so on. You would probably spend a lot of money on going to the gym and eating healthy and all kinds of stuff. So look at all areas of life and look at the drawbacks that fantasy would have for you if it actually became true and would be real, right? And that way you can kind of get a more realistic expectation and kind of let go of that fantasy and, become more neutral in that sense. And that way the entangled fantasy or depression that you have will also kind of lower its extreme, and eventually the depressive thoughts will dissipate. And you can also do the opposite. You can look at and write down what are the benefits of how life actually is right now. What are the benefits of not looking like that person XYZ? Maybe your spouse is actually appreciating you more because you spend more time with them, or they don't actually want you to look that super fit because they might be scared that it will be too much of a competition for them and that people will like you even more, and then chances are that you would go with someone else at some point eventually. That's just one opportunity maybe. But really try to look down and become real and sit down and really look at what would be the benefits, or what are the benefits of how life actually is right now without that fantasy being fulfilled. So these are some options for you, what you can do in order to lower the depressive thoughts. And it might be challenging to let go of those fantasies because you were holding on to them so much, but it is the way out of that depression. I can guarantee you that. So if you are willing and really dedicated to getting out of that situation, then take the time and do that. Write down the benefits of how life is as it is right now and the drawbacks of how life would be if that fantasy became true. And that way you can set yourself free from that depressive thoughts. You can become more authentic, set more realistic goals and have more realistic expectations. And also, if you do that, increase the chances that you actually achieve those goals as well.